So, do you know anything about techno?
Now, Michael Alig's style has changed every time he's been here. His current look, if you look closely, is sort of, what do you call it, accident victim drug addict. He proudly wears at other times phony neck braces, fake black eyes, made-up open sores, and hypodermic marks on his arm. Now, why, Michael? What's this new look all about?
I guess I'm bored. I don't know.
So, do you know anything about techno?
In a small town in Indiana in 1979, 13-year-old Michael Alig sat in the principal's office. His crime? Selling candy within school grounds. The principal had imposed a strict ban on sugary treats, deeming them a distraction. So Michael and his best friend Alan had gone to the store and bought boxes of 10-cent candy. They sold it to everyone for 40 cents a pop. Michael liked being a troublemaker, and he liked money. He was using the candy business as a means to support a worthy cause. He needed the Jordache look.
You've got the look, Jordan. You've got the look, Jordan. You've got the look.
The newest fashion trend wasn't cheap. The jeans cost $30. The quarters he stole from the laundry room in his apartment complex helped too. The thrill of being bad was just a bonus. The following year, he started high school. It wasn't easy being gay in a small Midwest town in the early 80s. He was called pansy, fairy, and even worse. But he knew from the age of 5 that he was different. He thought maybe he had a girl's brain in a boy's body. He liked the things that the girls liked: fashion, dancing, and gossip. While the jocks at his school played football and listened to Billy Joel and Steve Miller Band, he wrote a gossip column for the school paper and listened to Culture Club and Michael Jackson. He just loved Boy George's clothing and makeup. Everyone was going to the drive-in to see E.T. and Raging Bull, and he was downtown at the Rocky Horror Picture Show. He wished that he had his own Medusa transducer to turn his all-American town into a place where being queer wasn't the worst thing in the world. The constant bullying took its toll, and he retreated into his own fanciful world of fashion and architecture, building elaborate dream homes with Lego and reading Interview magazine. He'd leave the Midwest and move to New York City as soon as he graduated, he thought. That was the place to be for a young gay man. He would move to the city and meet Andy Warhol and go clubbing at Danceteria. When he turned 18, he moved to New York, got an apartment in the Bronx, and enrolled in Fordham University to study architecture. It didn't take long to realize that this was a mistake. Fordham was a Catholic university, and the student body seemed like a slightly older carbon copy of his high school. Despite being near the ballet and the opera, there was only one eccentric-looking person around campus. He called himself Juanito Extravaganza, and his boyfriend was Keith Haring. The three of them would smoke pot together and talk about art and the nightlife in Greenwich Village. Michael decided to transfer from Fordham to the Fashion Institute of Technology, much closer to the Village. That was where he wanted to be, where being queer was celebrated. But his budding social life and classwork were incompatible. Going to gallery showings and out clubbing at Area and Danceteria left him no time for university. Before he became a famous artist, Keith had once been a busboy at Danceteria, and he knew everybody. Michael pestered Rudolph, the owner of Danceteria, relentlessly, until he got a job as a busboy too. He'd work at Flip Clothing during the day and Danceteria at night. He constantly pitched his theme night ideas to Rudolph, who dismissed most of them as silly. But Rudolph caved, and eventually Michael was able to bring some of his ideas to life. He would pass out flyers for the club to anyone who looked weird or interesting, instantly befriending them with his flamboyant personality. Rudolph recognized a good club promoter when he saw one. Michael now had a job he loved and a growing tribe of misfits that he dubbed the Club Kids. Everyone is plastic. I love plastic. I want to be plastic. The club kids were like Warhol meets performing art. Their style mixed elements of drag, punk, glam, and cyberpunk. Everything was about blurring the lines between masculine and feminine, human and animal, or reality and fantasy. They experimented with makeup, hair, accessories, and prosthetics to create unique and original looks. Hats from doll legs and dresses made out of Tide detergent boxes, anything and everything could be used to create theatrical and avant-garde outfits. They also took additional inspiration from childhood, accessorizing with pacifiers, plush toys, or lunchboxes. By the early to mid-90s, Danceteria had closed, and Peter Gatien, a Canadian entrepreneur, would come to dominate the club scene. He started out in America in the mid-70s with a disco called Limelight in Miami, Florida, which closed after a fire. He opened another in Atlanta, Georgia, before setting his sights on the big city. He was known for booking the best talent, his club's eclectic decor, and having celebrity clientele. The Atlanta Limelight had a glass dance floor, so he installed a fish tank under it, where 2 sand sharks lived. In New York City, he owned Club USA, Limelight, the Palladium, and the Tunnel. The Limelight was an old church turned into a party mecca. Every night was something different. It could be a drag show, or a House of Pain concert, an Adidas fashion show, or a 9 Inch Nails concert. The pews were pulled up in favor of a dance floor, complete with cages for the go-go dancers. The shampoo room hosted a foam party, and the VIPs were seated in the choir section. The Tunnel was a former freight terminal for trains. It had multiple levels with multiple rooms. The locker rooms used by the freight workers were transformed into unisex bathrooms, large enough for a DJ to play in, and they did. The other rooms would change themes and be redecorated frequently. You might find a room that was just a giant ball pit. Maybe walk into an Alice in Wonderland room complete with plush mushroom chairs and hookah pipes. There was a half pipe at the end of the dance floor filled with skateboarders pulling McTwists and alley-oops. The Palladium was a concert venue and nightclub. It featured art installations, futuristic decor, and DJs playing new wave and Euro house music. Musical artists from all genres held concerts there, from Ozzy Osbourne to Duran Duran, the Ramones to Chuck Berry. Fashion parties and photo shoots were also frequent events. You could always find an A-list celebrity at the Palladium. Club USA was the 4th club in Peter's portfolio. Located near Times Square, this club attracted the fabulous and the famous. There was a plastic playground slide that went from the VIP area down to the dance floor. The hallways had peep show booths, and the stage had topless dancers, mimicking the surrounding Times Square debauchery of the past. You had Wall Street suits ordering a drink next to members of the Hells Angels, drag queens at the door talking to the NYPD, and ravers next to real estate players. Peter Gatien was the club king of New York City, and the club kids were the nobles of the kingdom. They brought the loyal subjects to the 4 clubs to party all night. No matter which of the 4 you decided on, you could always find Michael or his crew of club kids. Michael had his own weekly at the Limelight called Disco 2000. He hired the most outrageous acts and finally got to turn his crazy theme night ideas into reality. He liked dark themes such as Bloodfest, with dancers holding fake amputated limbs and sexy nurses walking around with vials filled with who knows what. A drag queen called Ida Slapter doing a champagne enema wasn't even the most shocking thing. Michael always had to get crazier. The theme nights had obvious suggestions of illegal drug use, with pills and other drug references on the flyers. By that time, Michael was doing drugs like it was 10-cent candy. He would get any drug he wanted for free, or in exchange for maybe putting them on the guest list or meeting the DJ or something. Michael promoted his boyfriend, DJ Kioki, often giving him top billing. Kioki went from a single turntable and a few records to superstar status, eventually DJing at raves all over the world. Several club kids would go on to achieve great success. Richie Rich launched his own makeup brand, and he then collaborated with the top cosmetic brand MAC. He also created several clothing lines which have been shown at the prestigious Fashion Week. Walt Cassidy is a designer and artist whose jewelry was featured in Vogue magazine. Amanda Lepore is a musical artist, model, and trans activist. She is well known for her extensive plastic surgery and doll-like look, and RuPaul rocketed into the spotlight with the hit song Supermodel, You Better Work. Once a mere drag queen, now the queen of drag. The club kids were like the supermodels of the 90s party scene in New York. They made the papers, they made the talk show rounds. The misfits had gone mainstream. Drugs flowed freely through the clubs. LSD, ecstasy, cocaine, and the club kid favorite, ketamine. Known as Special K, it's an anesthetic frequently used in veterinary medicine, mostly for cats. It's also suitable for use in humans, and it's preferred over other anesthetics for its rapid onset and lack of side effects in controlled doses. But used recreationally, higher doses will result in a dissociative state called a K-hole. The person will experience hallucinations and a detachment from reality. It can produce other side effects like agitation, memory loss, an increase in blood pressure, and loss of motor skills. In cases of repeated use or very large doses, it can cause psychotic episodes. By the mid-90s, Michael was a full-blown drug addict. He had begun using heroin and crack on top of the other drugs. He was neglecting his promoter job, so Peter sent him to rehab. The counselors there diagnosed him with histrionic personality disorder. People with histrionic personality disorder seek excessive attention, act in dramatic ways, and often display shallow emotions. They can be overly flirtatious, easily influenced by others, and feel uncomfortable when they are not the center of attention. That describes Michael Alig perfectly. Peter eventually fired Michael. He was becoming a huge liability. Peter was being investigated by the feds for running drugs in his clubs. The mayor, Rudy Giuliani, had a tough-on-crime stance and pledged a cleanup of New York City. In addition to going after the mafia, the mayor was putting a target on Peter's back. He was dealing with every agency they could throw at him: the health department, consumer affairs, the state, the feds. He didn't need the stress of dealing with Michael's drug problem, too. Michael was being evicted, though, and needed a new place. Peter didn't want to see him homeless and destitute, so he still helped him out as a friend. It's just that he couldn't risk being associated with the drugs. Michael's friend Freeze, who had also been evicted, was Michael's roommate. Freeze used to be Michael's dealer, but he had to quit after an incident with the Latin King gang. He sold Special K to a gang member who thought it was cocaine. The guy freaked out, and the gang threatened Freeze, so he had to lay low. Michael and Freeze needed a new supplier, and when an angel answered their prayers, they gave him a place to stay too. Angel Melendez would move in with Michael and Freeze. It wasn't long before Michael started stealing drugs and money from Angel. Angel knew that he was skimming, but Michael was getting him into the clubs, which was good for business. It's when it starts really eating into the profit margins that Angel needed to put his foot down. Michael owes him money, and he wants it back. On March 17, 1996, Angel, Michael, Freeze, and their friend Daniel Oster were all in the apartment, doing heroin and K. Angel decides to confront Michael about the money. Michael turns it back around. Angel owes him rent, he says. The argument escalates into a fistfight. Michael is high, he's just punching and kicking and biting, and he doesn't realize his own strength. They're screaming and yelling at each other, and Angel grabs Michael and slams him into the wall. Michael grabs for anything he can reach, throwing it or using it to hit Angel with. Freeze is in his room with Daniel, and when Freeze walks into the room and sees the commotion, he jumps in and does the same. But the object that Freeze grabbed was a hammer. It took 3 blows with the handle to put Angel on the floor. But Michael doesn't stop. He puts his hands around Angel's neck and doesn't let go. Angel stops moving. Should they call 911? But there's money and drugs, and if the cops get involved, they're all screwed. But what if Angel is in a coma or brain dead or something? They make a pact. They would be putting Angel out of his misery, really. After doing some heroin to calm down, they consider an overdose for Angel, but they want the dope for themselves. Something else, then. Something that will definitely kill him. Michael thought about the Drano from under the sink and grabbed a needle. He told Freeze to help him cover Angel's face with duct tape, just to make sure. Then they dragged Angel to the bathtub, put him in, and closed the bathroom door. Thankfully, Daniel was doped up and slept through the whole thing, supposedly. Angel had money, almost $10,000, and drugs. Michael went on a little shopping trip. A computer, some furniture, groceries from the gourmet market. And why not have some friends over to party since they had all of Angel's stash? Andre's boots were fabulous, and they were the same shoe size. Random people passed out in the apartment wasn't unusual, so when Michael and Freeze had some people over, they just thought the form in the tub was maybe someone nodding off or something. Michael put ice and baking soda and Drano in the tub to try to control the smell. The smell? We're having an issue with the plumbing, they told their guests. They leaned a mattress over the door to block it off for a few more days, but they knew they had a terrible mess on their hands and something needed to be done. Freeze went to Macy's to buy some cutlery, and Michael prepared for the task ahead. He was going to need a lot of dope to get through this. Freeze comes back with a cleaver and a couple of chef knives. He gave Michael 10 bags of heroin, and Michael went into the bathroom. Freeze got some black trash bags and a duffel bag, and that's where they put the legs. Late that night, they walked to Pier 66, right near the tunnel, and threw the duffel bag into the dark and dirty Hudson River. The following day, Freeze found a large box, and Michael placed what was left of Angel in a trash bag. After wrapping it up in a sheet, Michael double-bagged it. They taped it all up, placed the bundle into the box, taping that shut as well. They had a gruesome package to deliver into the Hudson River that night. They hailed a cab. "Where to?" the cabbie asked. "West Side Highway and 25th, Pier 66. After that, anywhere but here." Michael sold his new furniture and rented a U-Haul. Michael packed up and headed west to Colorado with 2 junkie friends. It was as good a place as any, right? But Michael underestimated the amount of drugs he would need to make sure that he didn't go through withdrawal. Halfway to Colorado, he was so dope sick that his friend called Michael's mother to come and get him. Meanwhile, Angel's brother Johnny is distraught over his missing brother. He reported him missing, but thousands of people go missing in New York City. Who's missing? A gay Latino man? The NYPD doesn't have time for that. There's rumors he was murdered. Listen, buddy, if there's no body, there's no crime. Every day he's out on the street, handing out flyers and posting them up in the village. He even offered a $4,000 reward. Michael, however, could not stay out of the limelight, literally or figuratively. He came back to New York 3 months later. While Michael was in Indiana, the body of a legless Asian man washed up on the shores of Staten Island. The police took the so-called floater to the morgue as a John Doe, and later buried it on Hart Island, where all the other John and Jane Does go. As part of the investigation into Peter and his clubs, the DEA needed people to testify against him. He was being charged with possessing, distributing, and conspiracy to distribute cocaine and ecstasy. The plan was to arrest current and former employees for anything they could make stick, and have them flip in exchange for immunity. Peter's partner heard rumors that the authorities were now looking into Peter for the disappearance of Angel. Now that Angel could be a witness for the prosecution, all of a sudden they cared. She threatened the club kids that she'd take the rumor to the local newspaper, the Village Voice. When Michael heard about this, he wanted to know what information the paper had, so he sent Freeze to talk to them. But others came forward anonymously. Some of them claimed that Michael had confessed to them. He killed Angel and dumped his body in the Hudson. Freeze says Angel left the apartment alive. Michael, he denies everything, of course. After the article comes out, the rumors persist, but nothing happens for a while. And when the cops did come for Michael, it wasn't because of Angel. They arrested him on charges of drug distribution. The DEA needed him to testify against Peter. The fact that he's the prime suspect to have murdered Angel Melendez does not seem to bother them. The rumor about Angel? Just a ploy to divert attention from the case against Peter's drug supermarkets. The New York Post was covering the story like Peter was a mafia boss or something. They jumped on the rumor of Angel's murder as well, and in September 1996 ran a story that a woman fishing on the Harlem River reeled in Angel's body instead of dinner. The New York Post, a tabloid newspaper with a reputation for sensationalized headlines, had just published a false police report. But a cop in Staten Island saw the story, and he remembered his legless John Doe. He arranged to have the body exhumed. Only dental records provided by Johnny could identify him as Angel Melendez. Michael thought that the DEA was at the door of his motel room in New Jersey. He told his boyfriend to flush the drugs, and when the authorities barged in, he was sitting on the floor playing with Lego. He denied knowing anything about Angel and demanded a lawyer. Freeze was picked up later that day. He made a full confession. Michael's lawyer said that he killed Angel in self-defense, then disposed of the body in a panic. The DEA still wanted Michael to testify against Peter, so they offered the pair a plea deal. Plead guilty to first-degree manslaughter and receive 10 to 20 years. And on October 1st, 1997, they did just that. And after all of it, Michael never testified against Peter Gatien. Peter went to trial for drug racketeering and conspiracy in January 1998. However, key informants retracted their statements. Another witness violated her plea deal by being rearrested for dealing drugs, and of course Michael couldn't testify either. The club kid witnesses, with their crazy hair, piercings, and drug habits, seemed uncredible compared to Peter, a successful businessman. The jury took 7 hours to acquit Peter of the charges. In the following years, he attempted to keep his clubs open, but he was again brought to court on tax evasion charges. Peter always did say he was pursued like he was the mafia, and, like many mafia members, the final charges that stuck were tax evasion. In 1999, he pleaded guilty and served 6 months in prison and was ordered to pay $1.6 million in fines. He was supposed to be on probation for 5 years as well, but in 2003 he was deported back to his native country of Canada. The eventual fall of the Club King was a slow process. Club USA had closed in 1994 and is now the W Hotel. The Palladium was closed in 1997 and demolished. It's now student housing for New York University. The Limelight was sold in 2001 and rebranded the Avalon until 2007. It was a mall for 4 years and is now a fitness center. The Tunnel was also sold in 2001 and has since been converted into office and retail space. Robert Riggs, a.k.a. Freeze, was released on parole in 2010. He got a bachelor's degree in prison and, as of 2012, works for Barred Prison Initiative, a college program for prisoners in New York. He got into NYU's sociology PhD program with a 5-year fellowship. Daniel Auster's role in the events has always been unknown. Since Freeze and Michael accepted a plea deal, Daniel did not testify against them as planned. In 2022, 44-year-old Daniel was charged with second-degree manslaughter, but not for Angel. He injected himself with heroin and nodded off while caring for his 10-month-old daughter. When he came around, his daughter was unresponsive. She died of an overdose of fentanyl and heroin. A few hours after being bailed out of jail, he was found unresponsive on a subway platform. He was removed from life support, and his official cause of death was the same as his baby daughter. Michael's old boyfriend, DJ Keoki, was arrested in 2007 in New York City. He was with 36-year-old Thomas Felty the night that Thomas accidentally overdosed and died. Keoki was charged with possession and intent to sell. The police allegedly found ecstasy, methamphetamine, and GHB in his apartment. In a statement on Facebook, he said, "I want everyone to know that the recent tragic events in my life have had a dramatic effect on me, and I'm finally ready to stop. Drugs had opened a gateway to hell for me. I accept this and blame no one but myself. Thankfully, after an investigation, all the charges leveled against me have been dismissed." Michael Alig was released in 2014 after being denied parole a few times. Conditions of his parole were drug and anger management therapy and an 8 p.m. curfew. He went on to have several ventures. He did the vocals on a single called What's In featuring DJ Keoki. He apparently took up art in prison, so he had a few gallery showings of his art in 2015. He started a YouTube channel called The PU, a comedy talk show satire.
Welcome to the Pew. Welcome to the Pew.
He went back into the club promotion business as well. DJ Keoki had a weekly called Outrage at the Rumpus Room in New York City and got Michael involved. But on Christmas Eve 2020, Michael was found dead in his New York City apartment. The medical examiner said the cause of death was acute intoxication by fentanyl, heroin, and methamphetamine. He was 54. This story is crazier than the club kid's makeup was. I'd love to know what you think. Was justice, or poetic justice, served to those involved in the death of Angel Melendez? What do you think of the Club King and the Club Kids phenomenon? Let me know in the comments section below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this case and found it interesting. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to my channel for more true crime stories. As always, feel free to share your thoughts and feedback in the comments section below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you again, and be sure to join us next time as we explore the stories hidden within the wrinkles in crime.